What is going on, everyone? AP over here at Run Pure Sports, bringing to you once again. We got the Lineup Builder Show with our partner Sabersim. I'm here with my guy Rubio Dimes. Rubio, what's going on, my man? How was your weekend?
Oh man, a fun weekend, full of sports. We had the college football stuff go down, which Alabama making it over FSU is a little bit controversial, but yeah, I mean, it's good time. And I get to watch my Cincinnati Bengals tonight get pummeled into the ground by Jacksonville. So yeah, I wasn't really looking forward to this game, but being a Cincinnati guy, I'll try and root for my team as much as possible, but things don't look too good.
Yeah, so before we get into the game, we a lot to talk about. Our guy JBC just absolutely nuking yesterday, 11-0 on the bet side. Posted in Discord. The premiums, what they swept. Just insane stuff. Like K Fallick round robin parlay to ship what, 70K? Is that what the number was?
Yeah, I think it was 70K. I think it might even be a little bit more. But yeah, those round robin, $1 a piece, I think.
Man, I had a parlay in play. I got greedy though. I took the Panthers money line instead of Panthers +3, which was the one push on the slate. I got a little greedy, but overall it was such a good day in the betting world. For us in the NFL streets. I also missed a generational opportunity, and I wanted to post the bet, but I was taking my boy to the Nebraska Creighton game that was here in Lincoln. The spread was Creighton was favored by 4, and yeah, like Nebraska ball. They were undefeated coming in this game, but they haven't played anyone. And I was talking to our guy Steve Boyton, who runs our college basketball DFS content over here at Run Pure Sports. And he's like, oh, you're going to be excited. You're going to love this game. Like Creighton they play like an NBA team. And that's exactly what I saw. I was excited. I was wearing red. And but I was just like, dude, Creighton's my team, man. They put up like 45 threes. They're like chucking logo threes. Like this one dude just was absolutely on fire. But that's the type of basketball that I obviously enjoy watching versus like the slow, boring type. So, but anyways, like Nebraska shouldn't have been dogs by 4 points there. Like that should have been an absolute generational, betting opportunity. But I digress. And it is funny. I just realized. So I'm a Chiefs homer, and I got my jacket on. I got Packers colors on right now, Rubio. I don't know what I'm doing. They absolutely pounded my Chiefs last night, and again. Big T obviously was on the Packers by no surprise. Great bet though. I'd give him that. And then JBC, that was the hammer pick that made it 11-0. So shout out to JBC. Shout out to the bet side. Absolutely incredible. All right, Rubio. Let's get to tonight's slate. We got obviously Bengals at Jaguars. The big news here, obviously Jake Browning will get his second start. Give us an overview. What do you see? What are you seeing in tonight's game? And then dive into the base build. And any new watchers, explain what the base build is. I think you're muted, sir.
Oh, that is brutal. That is brutal right there.
I should have just let you. I could have let you go, but I mean, it's a two-man booth.
I would have gone on for 5 minutes, I think, because I don't see the StreamYard there. But yes, we get a double-digit home favorite against the Cincinnati Bengals coming in with their backup quarterback. So yeah, you see your base projection set, right? You get my projections, basically see everyone who's on the slate. And what we do is we run 150 teams without any adjustments and seeing where the builds are basically funneling to. So one thing to make it easier too, I'm going to add a filter so that way we don't see any players here who aren't projected at all. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then I want to see where our ownership is at each position, whether it's captain or flex, and what team the captains are on and stuff. So you'll see one thing, it's Trevor Lawrence and Evan Ingram at top. And then you have Travis Etienne, Calvin Ridley, and even the Jaguars defense is above the next Bengals. So that's Jake Browning. So as you can see, a lot of people are going to be captaining a Jaguar tonight. That can be the trend that you can kind of get from this base build. It's nothing too in-depth. We just kind of want to see maybe where the ownership will funnel to, kind of get an initial glance on what the optimal builds are looking like. And no surprise here. It's a 5-1 that is the top one. One fun thing to do, projected score. Yeah, doesn't have a Bengals skilled player in there. When we go to, just flex, Evan Ingram is owned in 97% of teams. One thing that you must note is that the Bengals suck at defending the tight ends. So Pat Freiermuth had 9 catches for 120 yards last game. So Evan Ingram should be in line for a big day. This is the absolute nut spot for tight ends, and the Bengals defense has not shown any sign of slowing them down. ETN came in questionable, but looks like he'll play. You get Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, and just look, our highest owned Bengal here, AP, is Joe Mixon. Not really the recipe for success, if you ask me. At least the price is at $7K. But I think one thing that you'll notice when we go to stack exposure, 5-1 dominates 58% of the builds. And this is just the base build. This isn't the Sims or anything like that. We just want to see where the ownership kind of gravitates to, because these base builds kind of do show you what the field will kind of be wanting to build like. And 58% are 5-1s. That makes a lot of sense for a team that's implied a 14-point total. And ultimately, I think this could be a slate where if you are higher on the Bengals, maybe an entire week of Zach Taylor kind of getting Jake Browning prepped up, then this could be a slate where even 4-2 or 3-3, 3-3 especially, will get you different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the stack types. That's always something that I, enjoy looking at, especially in doing the optimal lineup study. The last 2 Bengals optimals have been 2 4s. So it was Lamar Jackson, captain in that game, obviously, where Joe Burrow went down. Jake Browning actually played, 55% of snaps after Burrow went down, and he found himself in the optimal lineup at 6K as a quarterback. And then at last game, Pat Freiermuth obviously just absolutely nuked, like monster game, another 2-4 build. And I don't in this situation in the spot, I don't think you eliminate 5-1s if you're multi-entering. Like what I see from the Bengals in Jake Browning, like one concern is I think they took one shot over 20. I don't even know if he had an attempt over 20 yards. And with the weapons that
he did have one, and it was down the field to Chase on the right sideline and stuff. And I do think that you're going to see a couple of just prayers. He also gets T. Higgins back, so another down.
Yeah.
Like T. Higgins is back. That's big news. This Bengals offense is kind of handicapped without him in terms of no Burrow, no Higgins. Higgins being back will definitely help. It's a lot better than Trent Irwin out there.
Do you think, though, it could be one of those slates where you get a lot of short, easy throws and easy completions, get the ball in your skill, position players' hands, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, obviously, and let them cook. And what that does is I kind of think like increases targets. Obviously, as a receiver, you get a point for a catch, and then obviously the yards that you're receiving there too. But like if all the touchdowns come, maybe Joe Mixon gets a touchdown or who knows? Could Jake Browning at his price, like where are we having? Like in that base build, is he landing in any of the captain builds?
Yeah,
or captain spots.
Yeah, he hits one of the only Bengals that hit in the captain spot. So here's kind of what those builds
look like. It's a price thing at that position,
Yeah, he's only 8,800. It's crazy how low he is, and it makes sense, team. So it's such a low total and stuff, but it's 5-1s, and I think what do they think his rushing prop will be? So one thing I like to do too is if you're ever wondering, hey, how much will he rush tonight? Sabersim's projecting for around 16.77 yards. That's not negligible in terms of a quarterback spot at 8,800. He showed he can run a little bit in that Ravens game too.
Yeah, he rushed 4 times, 40 yards. He was fine, completed 73% of his passes against Pittsburgh. Again, they're handling them with kid gloves, as you should, because if I'm trying to build a game plan, in this spot, it's find whatever way to get the ball in Jamar Chase's hands. And you got to think that with T. Higgins back, that's going to help out as well. And I don't even mind tight ends against the Jaguars too. And so Tanner Hudson has looked really good. I know it's kind of a muddied situation there with the Bengals, but Tanner Hudson seems to be the guy as far as, targets go and production goes. So then the Jaguars side, it's, Trevor Lawrence has found that connection over the last 2 games with Calvin Ridley. But when you're looking at optimal captains on the season, like the strongest, I think Travis Etienne has been optimal three or 4 times in the captain spot. So I don't want to just like totally dismiss the Bengals here. They have so many weapons, and if Jake Browning can just be a good game manager, like a Brock Purdy type, get the ball in your skill position players' hands, the Bengals could put up some points. Like, what's your lean? Do you have a lean on the total here? 39.5 points for this game. It feels a little light. I don't know. What's your thoughts on the total?
I actually think that the Bengals might be hopeful to put up a little bit more points than what the public thinks, in terms of just, you got a lot of talent still on that team. Zach Taylor will definitely get the ball to Chase around the line of scrimmage. I mean, it sucks that the first 2 games were division opponents, right? 55% of the game against the Ravens after Burrow got hurt. It didn't look that bad, to be fair, but the Steelers won. You're going at home against, a tough defense in the league. A rivalry that just everyone hates, everyone's blood boils, and the Bengals were in that game, and that's a key component too. What if you're thinking the Jaguars blow him out or whatever? Well, that's good for Browning stacks because he's only 8,800. He can easily get there in garbage time. We just saw it a couple weeks ago and stuff. When these guys are in garbage time, those fantasy points count too. And I think that this game could be, in one way or another, a favorable script for a guy like Browning or Chase, because I'll be honest, AP, when we sort by salary and stuff, and we're getting 53% Calvin Ridley, who's 200 less than Jamar Chase. Let's go ahead and just look at ownership. These ownerships are projected to be similar. This is the same Calvin Ridley that people have been dogging the entire season. And this is the same that Jamar Chase, who is going number 2 in best ball drafts everywhere. And, I know that Jamar Chase gets hurt without Burrow there. I'm not stupid, but they're going to get him the ball around the line of scrimmage a lot. They utilize him in motion a ton. He gets the ball, whether it's just an open space. And you saw with Deebo yesterday, he only needs a couple touches and stuff. And Jamar Chase is very similar in the fact that, you just give him a little bit of room or whatever, he can house it. And I like Browning. I like Chase. I like him over these wide receivers because the Bengals are vulnerable in 2 spots. The running back, that's ETN, and the tight end, that's Ingram. Why do I need the field to stack 5 Jaguars when this Bengals defense isn't that bad, but they're really bad against the run and tight ends? Oh, good. I'm already kind of exposed to that. And I think some 3-3s, might be the optimal build tonight. And I think I might be fiddling with Jake Browning. I told myself coming in that the Bengals are going to get smashed, but these ownerships don't make sense. Like you can't tell me that Calvin Ridley and Jamar Chase should be the same ownership tonight. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And you look at these guys, and if you're going to get a quarterback like Browning, I think 41% is even too high. I could see it being in the low 30s because Geno Smith last game against the Cowboys at AP, he was 24% owned. That is just wildly low.
Yeah, that's such a good point on Calvin Ridley. I mean, he's ran as pure as you can over the last 2 games. The matchups, too, were good. I mean, against Tennessee and then against Houston, which those Houston games it's like the Coors Field. That's like what it's been. And so now you go to, I think, what's a much different matchup here against the Bengals. So, and Calvin Ridley has shown an insanely low floor. Like 1.5 DK points against the Saints, 5 against Kansas City. I mean, more often, whereas I think Jamar Chase has a much better floor. And the reason too is because they're going to feed him easy targets. You got to, at least that's my assumption. And the script is going to be in favor of him as well. So that's why, if you truly think like the Jaguars are going to run away with this, then you should be heavy Travis Etienne scripts. Like, we've seen them lean on Travis Etienne. He had that stretch where he was just insane. And this is where you can also create some rules. Like, Travis Etienne and Calvin Ridley, just box score lurking, they don't correlate well at all. So, you could definitely create some game scripts there, around it as well, around a few of those 2 players. So, you could even make the case that, Christian Kirk, it seems like it's either it seems like T-Law just locks in on one guy. I mean, here's another thing too, is if you have Ingram, Ridley, and Kirk in your lineup, I don't even know if that's possible, but if you do, I would definitely hesitate because it does seem like Trevor Lawrence kind of locks in on one of those guys. And then T-Law, as well. I mean, I was stacking this guy up so hard on main slates over and over and over. And, it was, then I didn't fully fade it, but it was against Tennessee when he nuked and was optimal. I was definitely underweight. And so it's just funny because, he's rushed for 3 touchdowns over the last 2 games. So that's another thing that I don't necessarily see continuing. But let's get to our biased build. Let's start creating this. How we've been doing it. Position by position, right?
Yep. Position by position, we go in and basically it's buying and selling stock almost, right? Like, who are we buying the stock on? Who do we want more of, and who do we want less of? And we'll go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and anything else.
So let's kind of make our arguments. Here would be my argument for bumping up Jake Browning. One, the script is in his favor, meaning that they're going to be trailing. It's not like they're going to put in anyone else. So the opportunities should be there. And then 2, it's more so the talent around him can get him there, much like what we see with Brock Purdy. Now, completely different setup. Like San Francisco is an absolute machine, like a well-oiled, dialed machine. So I'm not saying they're the same, but I'm using it as a similar analogy that the talent around him can get him there. Kind of like why I jammed in Tua yesterday. And I mean, if that game would have stayed competitive, like Tua would have been the optimal guy, but they didn't have to do anything in the second half there. Like that offense looks so good against bad teams. It's just insane. And then, Trevor Lawrence, I would say the projection's fair. Keep it at that. Or if this is a script where it's just like the Jags are going to pound them, I would say it's a spot where they lean on Travis Etienne a little bit more. And so I don't know if we don't get that back and forth type of environment, I don't know if I can endorse just like bumping him up. So what's your thoughts on the 2 quarterbacks?
My thought on Lawrence is this projection's already like 2 points too low. You're seeing like he's one of the best running quarterbacks in the league too. Like I know that the touchdowns finally came last week. He got his first couple rushing touchdowns and stuff, but I think we can keep him around 19, but I'm like sitting here because I wanted to bump him down originally, and I was expecting him to have like over 20, and then he was at like low 19s. Like, okay, we'll just keep him at low 19 then. I think that's or we'll bump him down just slightly into 19 range, and then kind of see where the cookie crumbles because he's still 4 points ahead of Jake Browning. And one thing to note too, like Browning, and I'm not like a game log watcher or anything like that. It's just he had 13.7 and like a tough spot against the Steelers where it felt like the Bengals weren't moving the ball at all in terms of like trying to score. They scored 10 points. He had 13 fantasy points. Like if they scored 2 touchdowns tonight, who's to say he ain't throwing 2 of them? And I think getting him very close to Lawrence is probably the move. We bumped him up too. Let's give him another slight tick up too. I think Browning could be the answer tonight.
Yeah, to be optimal though as a captain, you think you need that like rushing touchdown? Because it's like when you have Jamar Chase and you have T. Higgins, it seems like more often than not, unless he's just spreading the ball around, it seems like more often than not, one of those guys is going to land in the captain spot over. I mean, do you have any comment on that too? Like, because if we bump him up closer to Trevor Lawrence, just due to his low price tag, you got to think that he's going to be pretty high in the captain spot for our new biased build.
I think that might be something good to do. I think it's debatable without a doubt because 8,800 for a guy like that, right? Who's got a decent rushing prop, who has shown that his instinct isn't to just throw a bad pass. No, it's to run around with the pocket, scramble around. And I think that it's enough worth the risk. Like, I know his anytime touchdown odds aren't going to be great. They'll probably be like plus 300 or whatever, but I think he could even throw one to Irv Smith or whatever, and he could be the optimal captain of that tag.
Yeah, I got you. All right, let's running back. And Josh D brings up a good point. Travis Etienne, limited participant in practice all week long. When you look at his snap share compared to earlier in the season, he was, 80% plus snaps, 88%, 89%. Over the last 3 weeks, 61, 66, 62%, with Dearness Johnson getting far more shares. What's your take on the running back side for the Jags? Because this is a great, when I look at it, and I'm looking at it purely from a fantasy point production standpoint, the Bengals have been like the, like 30th against opposing running back. They've given up the second most points to opposing running backs. What are you doing with Travis Etienne and the running backs here?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's good to go. I can't predict injuries or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that if he's out there, he's going to be 100%. And we've had cases like that where guys have come in banged up a little bit and they absolutely crush. And yeah, I think the rib injury is concerned. Last time I was concerned about ribs, TJ Hawkinson nuked in the first half against whoever they were playing. So I'm just, if he's in, which he looks like he is and stuff, he's going to be one of my favorite plays. If he gets his ribs cracked, well, that's just the price of playing some fantasy football.
But let's talk through it like from a standpoint of, if you are in the camp that the Jags roll, like earlier in the season, they would just like hand the ball off to Etienne, like over and over and over, just pound them, keep given, the rib situation with him, wouldn't they just be like, we're talking third, fourth quarter, if it's garbage time, it would be Dearness Johnson, right?
I would assume that Etienne's already crushing by then, though. If they're going to,
that's a good point. Good point.
I think that if they are going to crush him, it's going to be on the back of Etienne, and it would be Dearness Johnson, who's 4,200 too. It kind of goes into the Rico Dowdle thing on Thursday that we talked about, where Rico Dowdle was like too high of a tag to really kind of endorse, but I think you're still getting a cheap tag on Etienne. It's not like he's coming in at like 12K or anything. He's pretty cheap for this Bengals spot, and I just saw Najee Harris look absolutely goated against this Bengals defense a week ago. We saw Gus Edwards get into the box twice, Keaton Mitchell on them, and then literally any running back goes against the Bengals. And I think it would take like a 21 or 28 point lead for him to be like, okay, I'm good. I don't need my numbers, whatever. He still got 20 attempts last week too, 24 touches overall. I think that's going to be enough to just kill this Bengals defense.
Then on the Joe Mixon side, coming off a 8 fantasy point performance, eight rush attempts for 16 yards and 2 receptions for 44 yards. What do you see from Mixon here? Obviously, this isn't favorable for the script. If we assume the Bengals are going to be trailing, the price tag is fine. What's your thoughts on the Bengals running backs?
Oh, man, it's tough. I mean, I think that they want to establish it a little bit since Browning's quarterback. Mixon's going to be in line for some touches. I mean, 7K is not a bad tag. I mean, there was what slate was it where he was 9,600 and stuff. This is a steep discount for Joe Mixon. Only 2 catches last week. This is slightly surprising. I would have expected maybe a little more checkdowns at the line of scrimmage, more screens, get Browning comfortable, but I do think 11's a little bit too low. I mean, like I'm not a huge Joe Mixon guy, but if you just bump him up to 12.5, kind of get him competitive in that range, and he might pop. But why wouldn't you want a starting running back who's getting 80% of the work at 7K? I mean, we played Zach Charbonnet in the same spot, and he ended up getting there for Seattle. Albeit wasn't a great performance, but running backs tend to get in the box a little bit more. And Joe Mixon at 7K, I think it kind of coincides with if you like Browning or not. If you don't have Browning, the Mixon could be in there. It's not like this Bengals team is going to completely roll over. It could be 2 touchdowns on the board. If Mixon gets one of them, 7K is so cheap. He could easily be optimal.
Yeah, and you add T. Higgins there too. It's just another skill position player that the Jaguars are going to have to account for. And now, with Jake Browning in his second start, but third game, kind of running things. Maybe a little bit better at going through his progressions, and then the safety outlet could potentially be Mixon. So like what I'm saying is, even though I'm not a Mixon guy too, he's kind of dusty. I don't think we just necessarily want to disregard him, because you could get that script where it's like you see it all the time. Maybe it's they get the ball and it's 2-minute drill going into half, and maybe the Bengals are down by like 10 or 14 at the time, whatever. And it's just, dump off to Joe Mixon, 15-yard, dumps off. And when you so like what I'm saying is, in the past, if I'm like, I don't like this guy because he's full of dust, and I bump him down, sometimes that can definitely be like a negative. And even though your script was right, there were certain pieces within it like that scenario where it's like 2 dump offs for 35, 40 yards and could potentially get there, assuming he gets to work in the second half too. So that's basically why I don't want to fully discount Mixon. So I'm there with you. Now we got the pass catchers. So running back, we're building out kind of an overscript. It seems like
a little bit, yes.
and that's fine. Like, down in Jacksonville, the weather should be good, right? I would think. I mean, it's cold here. It's super cold. It was cold up in Lambeau last night. I'm just going to assume the weather's fine. Not something I worry about too much anyway. But what are we doing with the pass catchers? We talked about how, tight ends against the Bengals is definitely a thing. And when I look at my own stuff, against the Bengals, the secondary receivers have kind of popped, the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. But I mean, what are we doing with the pass catchers here for both sides?
My first gut instinct, Ingram's already high. I think, he's going to be coming in high owned. He's been high owned on main slates and stuff, but I think 13 is a good projection for him, and he's going to pop a ton at this price just for what it's worth. It's not like we're selling on him completely. My first gut instinct, though, AP, is to bump Jamar Chase up to 14 and get Calvin Ridley below him. And I think that kind of coincides with what we were talking about earlier. I think, I think Jamar Chase can have a good day. It's prime time. He wants to have a great game. Wants to solidify his name and stuff. I want Jamar Chase to be the highest guy, and I don't even really want it to be that close either. I think Christian Kirk also outscores Calvin Ridley. Christian Kirk was out projecting Calvin Ridley every single week. What has changed in the last 2 weeks other than some running very good on touchdowns for Calvin Ridley? So let's go ahead. Let's bump up Christian Kirk to where, he's the guy here. We get Ingram there second. Higgins, if there's a situation, a team that I'm worried about injury-wise, lying about their injury, yes, it is the Bengals. Zay Jones, I'm buying a lot of these scripts, but I will sell on Tyler Boyd just a bit. Anything you like Tanner Hudson too? I like Tanner Hudson, and I know I just bumped up. I downgraded Calvin Ridley a little bit, kind of downgraded Ingram and stuff. So I guess it's not as bad as I thought. But this kind of looks a little bit more right to me. It's just I think that people are way too high on Ridley, too low on Chase, and even a little bit too high on Ingram, even though he's going to crush tonight.
Yeah. So one thing that came to mind, is this a spot to where you could create a rule like Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, for example, or would you not? Like, I'm not that big on creating rules in Showdown, but can those two be optimal and the same with Jake Browning? We already saw I did a study a while back when it was Joe Burrow, and that, those two, if it was T. Higgins going off, it was a T. Higgins game. If it's Jamar Chase, it's a Jamar Chase game. Those two necessarily didn't correlate too well with each other, but both correlated, positively, obviously, with their quarterback. Any thoughts on that, or it's just probably no rules in Showdown?
Yeah, I think that separating Higgins and Chase is something that I kind of want to do usually. And I think when we run the Sims and stuff, you're going to notice that Jamar Chase and Higgins will hit quite a few lineups just because the Sims like that. I hate it. I don't think that Chase and Higgins ever combine really at all. So not something that I really want to do is stack them together. And I have made rules before already this season, AP, where I separate Jamar Chase and T. Higgins easily.
So going back, looking at the optimals for this season alone, okay? So the second game of the year against the Ravens, T. Higgins was captain optimal. Joe Burrow was in the flex. There's no Jamar Chase. The very next game, Jamar Chase was captain optimal, and there was no T. Higgins. And you just another game, Jamar Chase captain, no T. Higgins. Joe Burrow was in the flex. That was against the Cardinals. So it just seems like one of those, Jamar Chase, no Higgins, Higgins captain. This was against the Bills, no Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow was in the cat. And again, I'm not that big on rules, but I've started implementing them more, especially with Kansas City. You're rarely ever seeing two receivers do anything for Kansas City outside of Rashee Rice, but I've started in some of these spots where the trends feel very strong, or the correlation patterns feel very strong and predictable. I've started creating some rules. that's going to be one that I make. And let's actually do it just so that we can show the people how you create a rule. Because in Showdown, it is important. So can you pull up where you create a group rule? This is kind of how I do it, I guess. So yeah, add new rule. And then I always go to group. It's curious to see if this is how you do it. So you got to get their captain position and flex position. That's the most important thing. Because if you don't, then you could get both of them in the same lineup. So we're just saying only one max between between those two players. But obviously you can put them in the flex spot or the captain spot. So make sure when you're creating a rule like this that you incorporate the captain as well. And you don't have to run this rule. I'm not saying that. I just wanted to show the people out there how to create this rule. I like it, and it's going to be one I consider tonight for sure.
Yeah, no, I don't hate it at all. I think that we won't run it for this, but we can always add it back and stuff. I just want to see how many times it hits first. Okay. If it's only like a couple times or whatever, because we will be able to see it. We will be able to hit the magnifying glass on each of these too. So yeah, I think it's a good rule tonight though. I hate stacking Higgins and Chase together.
Yeah, very good. And then I like what you did with the tight ends. We're higher on Tanner Hudson than obviously the other tight ends. I'm good with that. Let's go to kickers and defenses.
Yes, let's do that. Perfect.
Now, a lot of this comes down to, obviously script and then, price. And I mean, I don't know, 3,200 for it's just so easy to discount a defense into especially a cheap defense. And it's always the team that's always, obviously the big dog is going to be the much cheaper defense. But 3,200, there are scripts to where, a couple sacks and a turnover or two, and a $3,200 defense is definitely viable in the flex. So what's your initial thoughts on kickers and defenses for the slate?
I think you keep them in the pool 100%. I mean, people are going to look at Jaguars defense 4,800. They'll probably be very popular tonight. 37% of the adjusted ownership for, a Jaguars. It's pretty high for a defensive stuff. Just go ahead and just take them down just slightly just because of what we have everyone else projected. The Bengals O-line, had its struggles this season. So I don't want to completely disregard the Jaguars. McManus has been one of the best kickers this season. I think even bumping him up to 9 will probably be good. McPherson's got an absolute cannon of a leg. I thought the projection was too low on him to begin with today. And then just kind of bump down the Bengals defense. And I think that we can go ahead and run these sims too. I think unless you disagree with anything there, but I think this is a kind of a good spread here for the kickers and defenses.
No, I mean, I think it sets up to be a great spot for one kicker, one defense potentially. I mean, Chris Boswell was optimal last game, obviously for the Steelers against the Bengals. Justin Tucker. So last two games for the Bengals, we've seen a kicker land in the flex spot, and same with the Jags too. Brandon McManus, over the last two games. I mean, 3 of the last 4, Brandon McManus has been in there actually a pretty high number of times on the season. So you're talking, I can actually do this real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, Brandon McManus is hitting at a very high clip on the season in the flex. We haven't seen a kicker captain for either side year to date. Not looking back at last year too. I now that we have a much larger sample for the season, I'm just posting this season's optimals. With all this data that I'm collecting, I want to do something with it eventually, but we definitely need multiple seasons first before we do it. I would love to have just like a database on the site where anyone could, pull up any matchup anytime and see what the past optimals look like. But kicker in the flex has been optimal at a high clip for the Jags, and more recently has been viable on the Bengals side as well. So, and that's, Rubio, it's kind of a function of the Bengals defense really needs to step up here in this spot, especially in the red zone. And if they can keep Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, from getting in the end zone multiple times, it's just going to be more field goal opportunities. So any comments, on that?
I think McManus is one of the best kickers you can roster in
Yeah.
DFS. Like it's been crazy what he's been doing, and it's great weather tonight, AP. So you were right. Zero weather concerns in the wonderful state of Jacksonville, or the city of Jacksonville. But yes, I think that McManus should be a high priority. Jaguars will come in higher owned than him. Yeah, I mean, I can't fault anyone for playing the Jaguars defense and stuff, but I do hope that the Bengals can put up some points, so that way we don't just have a 5-1 train. If you are playing the Jaguars defense, I think if you were wanting a unique team, it's got to be away from the 5-1 if you're playing Jaguars defense, because that funnel is crazy.
Yeah.
Teams. The top teams are always like defense builds because, oh man, I'm going to go 5 Jaguars and one Bengal and stuff. And everyone has the same thinking, right? Yes, I think that's kind of the way to approach it if you're playing the Jaguars defense. Let's go ahead and open up the rest of the positions here. We're also going to do the contest sims here. So let's go ahead and go to contest. This is how we add the contest sims. We go to contest here and scroll down. Well, you know what, AP?
No, they changed it. So it's so go to contest. You were there. It's a little bit different now with their update. Go to all contests. Scroll up. All you see my contests highlighted in green, and then all contests. There you go. All contests. Yeah,
I did this last night. It wasn't like that.
So I mean, our guys over at Saber, like, we gotta. maybe they made an announcement, but they definitely changed that button up on us, and it took me a minute to find it yesterday when I was doing my NFL stuff.
So here's how you do it. You go to contest, you hit all contests. We right click. Yeah. We're just going to do the main tournament tonight. And you right click, hit add contest, and then I'll go to settings, and then contest sim settings here at the bottom. And I'll make sure that this box is checked. And then I hit run contest sims. And basically what this will do, it'll simulate how the lineups perform against all the field lineups that they have, and how optimal the lineup usually is, how much it wins, and what the return on investment usually is too as well.
My guess is we're going to have a high number of different players as captains. So we're going to, like, this slate, I guess in my mind, when I looked at it early this morning, it just seems like a slate where it's like open it up at the captain spot, or at least the field well. So we're going to see ownership potentially kind of spread out at the captain spot. And it'll be interesting if Evan Ingram is the highest owned captain.
Well, the first one gets me excited, AP, and then I realize it's Chase and Higgins together. So
that's what I'm talking about. And you're going to have it. All right. So we ran it. We're sorted by risk adjusted and just one unique, right?
Yeah. Just one unique. Right now.
Just one unique. No, keep it one. Keep it one. It's fine. Here's my take on that. If you're not maxing, if you're running less lineups, I like to do 2 things. I like to add 2 uniques, and I do like to narrow my captain pool just a little bit. So those 2 things kind of go against each other. And when I say narrow my captain pool, it's just like the fringe plays that I just are completely fringe. I eliminate. So I still think, even though I'm probably going to run 50 to 75 like I normally do, I still think I'm going to have quite a few captains tonight. But anyways, how many builds are we getting with Chase and Higgins in the same lineup?
So, all right, let's check it out here. With Jamar Chase captain, we do not get any T Higgins at all. So that's one thing there to look at, which makes sense, right? We don't want any Chase captain with Higgins, in my opinion. If you do T Higgins captain, you get 2 lineups with Jamar Chase. They're both with Browning. Honestly, not the worst builds in the world, right? I'm cool with keeping that. So let's go ahead and see how often they are paired together in the flex. And this is easy to do. You just hit the plus sign on, by their name. And Jamar Chase is paired with Higgins 16% of the time. All right. A lot of it is Bengal. It's Bengal predominant builds. You get some 3-3s in here too. I think it's a little bit high for me, AP. I think I'd rather lower that, but that's also the great thing about Saber is that if I did, kind of zoom in on these lineups, right? I don't want any Bengals 5-1s. Well, let's just hit the trash can on this one. Right. And let's go ahead and talk about, do we really want 3 Bengals pass catchers in the same team, even though it has, our favorite captains and stuff. Let's go ahead and get rid of any Bengals 5-1s. Let's get rid of kicker captain with McPherson. And all of a sudden now we trim this pool from 8 to 5, just like that. And I think that's kind of the way to do it, AP, is, we still get some builds that can make sense. We can still have Chase and Higgins go off. And, we're high on this Bengals offense in general, kind of relative to the field, right, on our projections that we built out. So, yeah, I think that's kind of the move to do it. It's just kind of select each of these teams and see which ones are popping the most and get rid of the ones you don't want.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I don't mind that percentage that we had, and that's the perfect way to narrow your build down too. Highlight the players, sift through, look through the builds and delete the ones you don't want, and new ones will pop up. And if new ones pop up and they are also in line with what you were trying to delete, just delete again, right? I mean, it's one of the easiest ways to do it, right? So do you go through, like, how often are you doing that? Are you going through each different, like, are you looking at all of the, let's say, Browning captains? And if you get, Browning plus maybe it's, who would be someone bad, like a Browning captain, and then it was like, a Jags onslaught on the other side. Like, I don't know if I'd run that, because you're assuming that, like, Browning's going to, rush for a touchdown. Like, I don't see a scenario where Browning could be captain with no, with him not paired with a receiver in the flex, like a Browning and the Joe Mixon in the flex type of thing. I mean, we're probably not getting any of that anyway.
We only get one Jake Browning lineup, and it doesn't not make sense. I actually like it a lot. We're high on Tanner Hudson too. We just bumped him up just slightly. And this is a type of build that could easily win, right? Say the Bengals fall off the upset or anything. That's why it's so good too. Despite filling the salary, doesn't think that it's going to get duped at a high rate, right? And I don't think the Sims are very high on Jake Browning AP, but you ultimately have to look at it and be like, man, I wouldn't want a 5-1 naked Jake Browning stack, right? But I'm not usually examining it that closely. Like, I don't want like a Tyler Boyd captain tonight with just Jake Browning, even though that build I don't hate that build and stuff, but I'll probably just X the captains I don't want and kind of run through it. Before you
X them out, I want to do one thing. Go to stack types and just eliminate the 5-1s. I want to see what that does to our, because this was something we talked about. We were getting a high number of 5-1s. And again, if you're running 150, I wouldn't do this, but if you're running less than 150, I don't mind it. Especially if 5-1 is going to be a popular stack path for people tonight.
Yeah, 100%. So, like the stack types and stuff, we all of a sudden see it's a lot of 4-2s and stuff. So let's go to team stacks, and the 4-man stacks are still Jaguars dominant, but we bumped up these Bengals. The Bengals are much cheaper than the Jaguars, and like I ultimately think that the Bengals can keep it a little bit closer than I originally expected coming in. We were very overweight on the two guys that we like the most, Evan Ingram and Travis Etienne. We still get a bunch of the quarterbacks too, which I think is usually the move. And Joe Mixon's our highest skilled player, Bengal, which at 7K, it's too cheap. I don't hate these builds at all. I don't hate the direction that we went. I think the captain pool is large, but it makes sense, right? If it's not Ingram or Etienne, then it kind of separates itself in the field. And we already have those two guys at a very high amount. I think that our exposure to them is 30%. So basically almost half our teams have Etienne or Ingram captain, and then Christian Kirk kind of covers that other part too. So, I think these builds kind of look pretty good from what we made.
Who do you think is going to end up being the highest owned captain? Do you think Evan Ingram's going to be up there just due to price, the spot from a flowchart standpoint?
I think it'll be Etienne. I think he'll be the highest owned captain. And then with Lawrence having 3 rushing touchdowns in the past few games and stuff, it could easily be Lawrence too. He's projected for around 13%. I think Jamar Chase and Jake Browning are both too high. Projected wise, I think that some of this could funnel into Ridley, Kirk, and Ingram is too low. I think Ingram does crack double digits. You're going to see Ingram tonight. I guarantee it's going to be like 55% ownership, 50% ownership, and like 10% the captain. So I think I think Ingram's going to be really chalk.
It seems like if you're trying to be like, sharp contrarian, I mean, Evan Ingram, I don't think he has a touchdown on the season, right? I was just looking at this. And I mean, that could come tonight. It's the best matchup ever. But if ownership is going to be overinflated due to price, due to matchup, especially with everyone looking at what Pat Freiermuth did, I mean, we could, I'm not saying like fully fade Evan Ingram. Not what I'm saying at all, but fading him maybe in the captain spot if he's going to be a popular captain could be interesting, especially if you're building less lineups than 150. And then taking a stand on Christian Kirk, because a couple things. It's everyone's seen, what Ridley's done over the last 2 games, and people are now, it seems like, potentially discounting Kirk. So you could flip it there by getting more shares of Kirk, and then Travis Etienne as well. But Travis Etienne obviously already should be pretty popular. So I mean, yeah, he rushed 20 times and had 6 targets last week. So I don't know, the whole rib concern, I mean, could be a concern, but like you said, if we're to the point in the game where it's garbage time, he probably already crushed in this matchup. So yeah, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? Just like fully fading Ingram in the captain spot, just as a leverage move.
Yeah, I think the leverage move would be done a little bit differently. I can't get the fact that Pat Freiermuth looked like Rob Gronkowski last week. You had Mark Andrews, who would have crushed against the Bengals too, but this team cannot defend the tight end position at all. And I think that Ingram is too cheap. And I've not been one who played Ingram much this year. He's always been chalk on main slates, right? He's always been in good spots and hasn't really crushed or anything. But the middle of the field is just wide open. It's crazy. It's just as long as Logan Wilson doesn't give him the old hip drop tackle and send him out of the game two catches in, I mean, he's going to crush. And that's where I'm at. Is Ingram's one of my favorite plays in the slate. I don't think you're getting too different by Xing him. I think that, if you do want 2 quarterback builds, I mean, some of these builds look really good with Ingram captain. Like, you get Trevor Lawrence, you get Brown, and you get one weapon with him, right? Let's go ahead and just scroll to the top. 4 twos even, where we talked about how Ingram and ETN were the ones to have. Yeah, I think building a core around Ingram and ETN, especially if you're playing less than 150, like if you're only doing 20, I think there's a decent chance that you could just say, I think Ingram and ETN are my guys, and just move on from there and hope they crush, because I think they will.
One argument for maybe being slightly over on Bengals skill position players in the captain spot is just that, like, this Jaguars team, they have a lot of mouths to feed now. That's like the one risk I see. Like, the target tree that we often talked about is not as clearly defined as some other teams, especially like the Bengals. I mean, the Jaguars, Travis Etienne, Dearness Johnson's even been getting more shares. Ridley, Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, and then Luke Farrell too. Luke Farrell coming off a nice game and saw some good targets last week as well. I mean, do we have any Luke Farrell? That was one projection I maybe overlooked a little bit, but it'd be funny if Luke Farrell got in the box before Evan Ingram from a tight end standpoint. Yeah, because it doesn't seem like one of these tight ends is going to score today.
Oh, Luke Farrell is questionable.
He's questionable too.
Check his status. Brenton Strange is the guy who I've been seeing too. We get some Brenton Strange at 200.
Luke Farrell practiced all week, so I think he's going to play.
All right, so Farrell will play. Perfect. Yeah.
And Strange didn't practice on Saturday, and Luke did.
So they're both questionable. Oh, sick.
Yeah. But look, yeah, he was limited participant practice all week. I'm just saying it would be funny. That's just how these things go sometimes. So I might have to, and I could create another rule around that too. But actually, I might not. Like, if tight ends just have been that good against the Bengals, I would. I mean, Farrell, what's his price tag? Has to be really low, right?
2,600.
2,600. Okay, I mean that's not super cheap. Yeah, so I mean, this slate looks to be pretty fun. I think it could go in many different directions. Like, I think like the Jaguars could smash here, but we could still they're still past to where, like, it's not going to be like a full-on 5-1 onslaught. You know what I mean? And that's why the showdown slate is a ton of fun. What's your final thoughts on the game tonight?
Oh God, I'll be drinking beers early, hoping for this game to get over.
Hey, I'm there with you, and I mean, Chiefs in shambles right now. So I mean, who knows?
Yeah, the Chiefs. You guys have hope, man. We lost our hope 2 weeks ago. Yeah, you guys need to fix that offense. I'll say that. No more throwing to MVS down the field. But yeah, I'll be drinking early and hoping that Jake Browning and them can just get the ball in space. Steelers limited them really well. There's no surprise there. It's an AFC North rivalry. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of allow the Bengals to open up more things, and I think the Bengals put up some points. I don't want to do a 5-1 Jaguar stack. I don't want to eat the chalk there. The Bengals are priced down enough to where they absolutely make sense if you want to do some 3-3s. And yeah, I'm going to hope for a close game. Not to say that'll happen, but Ingram, ETN, my top 2 Jaguars, and then hope for some Browning and Chase to kind of just pay dirt.
Yeah, I might. I mean, I honestly, I might see who JBC's on. If JBC's on the Bengals tonight, I'm running Bengals scripts. I mean, if he completes the perfect weekend, that would be an absolutely incredible feat. And I think he gets it done tonight. I'm not going to try to predict the game. I'm going to wait to see where he's at. But I do think you can build your script according to that as well. Like if you would have done that if I would have done that last night, building Packers scripts, that would have been, that would have been the path to do it for sure. Just because the Chiefs, they're becoming so one-dimensional. Hand the ball off to Pacheco, which is just insane. I don't know what they're doing. Like their play calling's become so predictable. Like they had so many chances down in the red zone. Like those first 2 field goals were on first down. They're instead of running a play action, pass to one of their tight ends. They finally did in the second half to Noah Gray. But they just handed it off to Pacheco, and everyone knew he was getting the ball. And then now you're in an obvious passing down. And so it's like, you got to get creative. And they used to do that all the time. And so I was really frustrated with the play calling. They got a lot to figure out. Like this team is definitely a mess. And I'm talking about the Chiefs, obviously. So as far as tonight goes, a good question here about 20 max from the Baboon. Yeah, it's slate dependent for me. How many captains I would use in 20 max? Honestly, I don't have a defined number. It's going to be really slate dependent. Some slates where I think it's more predictable, more obvious, I would have a more defined captain pool. On a slate like tonight's, where I don't know, I honestly think that there are a lot of viable captains. Even in 20 max formats, you're trying to hit the nuts. I don't mind diversifying like at all. What do you have any thoughts on that, Rubio?
Tonight's a little bit tougher. You caught me in the middle of the Sabersim screen. Tonight's a little bit tougher. We see 13 captains right here. It's Ingram and ETN, and then if you were feeling like this is going to be an onslaught, I would stick with maybe just going heavy ETN and the 20 max, or sprinkle in a little bit of Kirk and stuff. Don't deviate from your script. But if you think the Bengals keep it close, and 20 max especially, go ahead and add in some Bengals. I think that's kind of the move to do it. We talked about it. I hope the Bengals keep it close, but that's not going to prevent me from, just jamming in Ingram and ETN to the captain, because those are 2 of the best plays by far tonight in my eyes. But Bengals captain will be Contrarian to the field tonight. So don't get away from that if that's what you think that is the case.
Another good way to do it that I think is just fundamentally really sound is narrow the captain pool. And price matters. Price definitely matters, but at least narrow it down to the players with the most upside. Travis Etienne, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram on the Jaguars side would be my considerations in 20 max, and then Jamar Chase or T. Higgins on the Bengals side. I don't know if I would include Joe Mixon in there, and I'm talking 20 max only. It really would depend, but I would eliminate defenses and kickers in 20 max formats. Do you think that's pretty sound? Like that if you're trying to build for consistency, for or time and time again, for upside and hitting the optimal, that's how I would do it for these type of slates.
Yep, I agree. It should be a fun one tonight. I know that you wanted to get to some NBA, but I don't know. It doesn't look like
we'll save. Do you want to run just like a base build real fast?
Let's get.
We could do it for the people. I want to see what the. So the reason I brought it up to Rubio before we started the show was just Indiana. The pace is going to be insane for both games tonight. I actually like both overs. And I think the total, even if you don't like it, I think you could hedge out, create a middle, because I don't I have no idea who's betting Pacers unders, even with Halliburton out the other day. I thought about it for like 2 seconds, but I'm like, no way. Like TJ McConnell's just going to get in there and he's going to push the pace. Like this team is sprinting up and down the court and they're playing no defense. And the reason why like I'm super confident on this over is, dude, Boston is a team that can play. They can play any style basketball. If they're a team that slows it down, they'll play with you. They can play in the half court. If you want to run, which the Pacers are going to run with everyone, I mean, I think one of their Orlando games hit like 260, 270. I mean, they're running with a team that loves playing college style basketball, running those half court sets. Like they're going to put up a big number tonight as far as points go. But my point and why I wanted to see the optimal is the rotation for Indiana is terrible, like horrendous. And with that game being a high total, I could see a lot of Pacers land. I haven't even looked at the slate or anything. In my mind, I could see the opto liking too many Pacers is what I was initially thinking. And that's without seeing any pricing yet, running any builds. And so I'm curious because I think this sets up to be a really interesting 2-game slate tonight.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is also one of those things where I talked about it last week. You know, I've been talking about it all in season tournament. The minutes projections are usually way off for some of these teams, right? So this is a playoff game. I mean, whether you like it or not, it's a playoff game. Here's the projected score real quick, KP. But I'm checking the minutes, seeing if they're matching up across the board. The first thing that I noticed is we just did 20 teams because we wanted to see what the top one was. It's Celtics and then it's 2 Pacers, AP. So you kind of see it doesn't get above 2 Pacers all that often until about the 5th build where you get Buddy Hield in the mix. But is this kind of what you were expecting?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought I hadn't looked at pricing or anything like that, but I was just going to be curious. And I do think, build wise, you're going to want 1 or 2 pieces, but I don't know if I would overstack it. And then, on the Boston side too, that's going to be something that you got to look at. The pace is just so strong. And, Drew Holiday right there, 6'9", seems to be a little underpriced, but we should get a tighter rotation. Like Al Horford, I haven't even looked at the injury report.
Saber has an 8-man rotation. It's an 8-man rotation for Boston, I think. So
yeah,
I don't think they didn't give anyone else a projection. They didn't give Keta, who played last game. They didn't give Banton a projection. So that's kind of very interesting in my opinion. I think that's the right move.
Yeah, and I'm going to have a ton of interest in the Boston side. Obviously, like Jason Tatum, dude, he put up a 53 piece in like 25 minutes against his team. And so, yeah, like Boston sacks are going to be really interesting. And it's just be careful with the run backs. And then I still think, like, don't forget about the later game. More mouths to feed on both sides, but the pace is going to be good. So I don't know. I'm right after this show. I got a few other things to do, but then we're gonna have full content for NBA tonight. Playbook. I already talked to Gary. Playbook's going to be up. We'll have core plays. I'll have my heat map, and we have 2 fun slates. Like, I like these shorter slates. I think they're a ton of fun, especially in multi-entry formats. So a lot of money to be made tonight. Any final thoughts with NBA?
No, I think you got it. I think just looking at the minutes projections, I don't know. I can't speak for other sites or whatever, but I think Saber is doing a great job at projecting these minutes. I think this is the way to approach it. I think the only thing I would change would be north of Fox and Sabonis. I don't know why I just X'd out Malik Monk there. But I would just get more north on Fox and Sabonis in terms of just minutes projections. But yeah, I think this is an incredible slate. It's a game theory slate. People might just treat it like a normal regular season game. That's just not going to be the case. So it's going to be a fun game. We're caring about basketball in December, right? It's so great in my opinion.
Yeah, it really is. And I forgot Halliburton didn't even play last time. But this game combined for like 270 points and no Halliburton. The Pacers were like 3 from like 40 from 3-point range. Like I gotta put more money on the over. 2-4. I got like it was 240 or something and a half. It's just not enough for these games. And like I think it's like 15-2 on the season now. I don't know how many games they've played, but even against Miami, those 2 games went over. Like they smashed the overs. And the books just, I don't know. They haven't adjusted. They adjusted for a little bit, but like I honestly think the total in this game should be like 246.5 or higher. That's like where I have it. And it's off by a few points. And I've been saying that for like all season long. And I've been just blind betting it over every single time. So if the Pacers keep this game close, though, it's going to be really nice for fantasy purposes. Don't forget about Halliburton at 10-9. I mean, Halliburton, too. I think he plays tonight. They're going to need him here. This dude put up a 73 piece against Miami. So if he can do that against Miami, he can put up a monster number against Boston, against Drew Holiday defense. And everyone's going to be talking about his price and Drew Holiday defense. Derek White, a good defender too, but Halliburton is insane, man. The dude is so good. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun slate. Any final comments, or should we get out of here?
Let's go ahead and get out of here. I'm excited for this slate. It'll be fun.
All right, so we got the Print Factory coming up later today with the usual crew. Wiley, JSU, and Big T are on that. Anyone else or any other show today, or just the Print Factory?
They'll be going over NBA for the first part, I think I heard, and then there will just be NFL, but no NBA shows tonight. I imagine we might have one for the championship game on Saturday. If not, I will be sure that we have one.
Yeah, yep. Very good. All right, with that, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. Helps us out a lot. For Rubio, I'm AP. Let's run Pier.